A country road in Normandy. The summer of 1944. A German motorcycle messenger carries a folded slip of paper and a destination. He keeps his speed up, watches the sky, and listens for engines above the drumming of his own. For this rider, speed is the sole reason for his existence. He is mounted on specialized military engineering. Machines like the BMW R75 and the Zundap KS750 were heavy sidecar combinations, featuring flat twin engines and locking differentials that drove power to the sidecar wheel. These features allowed the rider to pull through mud that would stop. A standard bike. This messenger was a vital part of the layered communications network. Field telephones were the preferred foundation because wire was private, ensuring that orders didn't broadcast themselves to the enemy. Above the wire sat the radio, used primarily for fast-moving armored operations. However, radio transmissions announced their own presence, allowing Allied direction-finding units to intercept and locate German positions within minutes. The human messenger served as the fallback layer of the system. When wires were cut and radios were silenced by the threat of interception, a man carried the message in his hand to ensure the chain of command remained intact. This entire doctrine rested on a geographic assumption that the space between two headquarters was safe to cross. For 4 years, the zone behind the fighting was a sanctuary where messengers and fuel columns moved like clockwork. By the summer of 1944, German commanders began filing reports that described a new and lethal reality. Their messengers were dying on empty roads, miles behind the front, often without ever seeing the enemy that killed them. Allied strategy targeted the enemy's rear as the decisive location for victory. The goal was to render the space behind the front line unusable, strangling the Army's ability to act. This process began with the destruction of the rail network. Allied pilots hunted locomotives and cut lines until rail traffic in northern France suffered a collapse. German fuel, ammunition, and couriers were forced out of the trains and onto the open roads. Once on the road, they were vulnerable to the JABOs, Allied fighter bombers. Aircraft like the Hawker Typhoon and P-47 Thunderbolt maintained a lethal presence over the German rear, hunting for movement during every hour of daylight. General Elwood Pete Quesada turned this air supremacy into a responsive tool for hunting ground targets. He placed Air Force radios inside lead tanks, allowing ground controllers to call down aircraft onto obstacles in real time. This math illustrates the logic of armed reconnaissance. Pilots roamed assigned sectors to destroy any vehicle they found on their own judgment. The sky over the German rear was not empty. It was occupied by an enemy actively looking for things to kill. The threat from above forced the German army to become a nocturnal organization. Divisions slept and hid through the day, only moving on blacked-out roads once the sun had set. A messenger, however, was sent when speed mattered most. This urgency pushed him onto the roads during the exact hours the enemy owned the sky, turning his necessary speed into a death sentence. American gunners had spent the 1930s solving the problems of speed and coordination in massed fire. They created the fire direction center, a coordinating brain that allowed forward observers to call down fire from dozens of dispersed batteries simultaneously. This coordination enabled a tactic called time on target. By synchronizing the fire of multiple batteries, shells would arrive on a single grid square at the exact same moment, destroying a target without any preliminary warning. To this speed, they added a secret weapon, the proximity fuse. This small radio transmitter, built into the nose of the shell, was protected with the same level of security as the atomic program. As the diagram shows, the proximity fuse listens for an echo off the Earth and triggers the explosion 30 feet above the ground. The reach of this system was absolute. Was himself struck down when an Allied fighter strafed his staff car on a road well behind the fighting. The German rear had become a pre-wired killing ground. Movement was detected by observers in the air and punished instantly by roaming aircraft or massed artillery shells. Ground surveys conducted after major battles revealed a surprising discrepancy. While pilots claimed hundreds of kills, most heavy German armor was found intact, having suffered very little direct damage from the air. The Allied machine achieved. Without this support, the heavy armor was just a collection of immobile steel boxes. While a tank might survive a strafing run, the same machine gun fire would shred a truck or a man on a motorcycle. The Allies focused on destroying this connective tissue of the German army, littering the roads with the remains of transport and couriers. German military doctrine relied on the initiative of the man on the spot, a style that depends on a constant flow of information. By targeting the messengers, the Allies severed the nerve of the army, leaving its commanders blind and unable to coordinate. This reached its peak in the corridor of death at Valais. An entire army group was wrecked because it was forced to move through a rear area that the enemy had turned into a place of slaughter. The messenger followed his training and his machine worked perfectly. His vulnerability came from a German doctrine that failed to account for a lethal rear. The sanctuary he had been trained to trust had ceased to exist. The Allied system redefined the space between enemy headquarters as the decisive battleground. They built a machine that could kill a messenger 50 kilometers behind the line as a matter of routine, making the German style of war impossible.